These are top 2%, 3% individuals
I
in
don't think we
Australia.
say bare minimums. We say
Ideally,
ideal.
all right. What's the bare
Ideally.
minimum? What's the bare minimum then?
I don't really care, to be honest.
You don't care if the guy has any money. You don't care.
Like, it's
Long
not
term.
obviously that doesn't.
What
It
happened
has
to the
to
what
happen.
happened? What happened to the guy that you were dating that was making less than you?
It was something. We broke up because of different reasons,
That's-
but not
that-
the financial thing.
That has some play on it. I'm telling you, it does. It definitely does. You can say whatever you want to say, but I know it's the truth. Do you know why I know it's the truth? Because
Sure, you know my relationship.
no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know
Seems
your
like-
relationships, but I know data. I know reality. So 70% of marriages in Australia, it's actually more like 65%, but 70% of marriages end in divorce. 80% of them are initiated by women, and the most common reason is financial. Women absolutely date based on finances, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's to ensure that you're going to have a good life for you and your children, and it's always been that way. It just wasn't money and status. It used to be how many goats you had, how much land you had, how big your castle was, are you the chief of the village, blah, 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 different markers. But the markers are the same because we're still animals and we still operate exactly the same way. We've got lights and modern conventions and all these things, but we are still apes. And apes operate like this because that's what meant our survival for so long. That's why I know, not because I know you personally or I know your relationship, because I know the dynamics of psychology for men and women. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Yeah.
It does. But
And I'm not saying that you would never date a guy that is earning less than you, but for the most part, it's not going to work out. It's not.
it's just big. I feel like marriages don't work out. Yeah, the finance things is a key component, but it's because women like know that are able to get a good job, and back in the day, you will have to stay home because of the kids, and you will make that decision based on like if I go in the 60s, a woman's are like, oh, single with 2 children, she can get a job, like a good job to maintain both.
I agree with that, but
So
statistically speaking, that's unrealistic because women initiate divorce, not men. So I get your fear, and I think that's a propagandic fear that's kind of like pushed by feminism and stuff like that. Men don't divorce women very often. And the most highly correlated scenario of that is when the men are younger than the women that they marry, which is uncommon. Women generally marry men between 3 and 10 years older than them. It's uncommon for women to marry men younger than them, but the times that they do, they end in divorce for the most part. There's a strong correlation between younger men and older women always getting divorced. The data represents a completely different view of what we're kind of taught. And this is what I'm saying, like, a lot of the guys don't meet women's standards. They're pathetic, in women's own words. They're economically unattractive. They're weird, they're nerdy, they're whatever. So when women do find certain guys that fulfill their traits, and then they are argumentative with them and say, well, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I've got my own career, I'm strong and independent. What do you think's going to happen? It's not going to work out, probably. Like, the type of individual that women want are all the same. Let's go. This is another question, and again, a lot of data to back all this stuff up. What percentage of men do you think are regularly sexually active?
For me first.
Yeah, you can go first. What percentage?
Sexually active.
Actually, let's start on this end because you might know the answer. Let's start on this end. What percentage of men out of 100?
Like 5, 10? 5 or 10?
I was at like a 3%.
3%?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go 10.
You guys are pretty accurate on that.
Yeah, it's like 7.
It's actually more like 10 to 15%, and it's like a small group of men that are like this apex fallacy type thing. They get all the attention from all the women. So the small group, the 10% that you're talking about, they generally are the ones dating many, many, many different women, going on many, many different dates, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, like, it's kind of like that 80-20 rule. There's the top 20% of guys that get all the sexual access, and then the bottom 80% that don't get a look in. And yeah, that's the data. That's the data. I don't think that is the case, and there's a lot of data to back that stuff up too. Like, I think there was a book or something, and it might have been Dataclysm or something like that, but they have the data based on which profiles were sexually attractive on Tinder, on OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, all that stuff, men found like somewhere between 60 and 70% of the female profiles attractive, women that they would go and pursue and date and blah, blah, blah. Guess what percentile of male profiles were found attractive?
3.
2.
I'd say like 5%, and that's pushing it.
Like 3 or 4.
Yeah. So the data was about 4.5%. So this is where we keep going back to that whole thing. It's like we want what we want. We have these incredibly high standards, but unfortunately, who has all the leverage in the situation? And this is where it starts to get really tricky and like, oh yeah, but I want what I want. It's like, okay, but purely off of supply and demand, is that realistic or probable to achieve? Purely off of numbers. This is all just mathematical. Can you get what you ask for? And the thing that I'm kind of getting at is like, how are you going to achieve this type of individual? How are you going to attract this type of individual if you're not really 100% sure what they even want? That for me is a scary question, because I know what women want based off of math, based off of statistics. I'm not saying that means that women are going to be attracted to me. It just means that I'm going to have a much larger pool of attraction, because I know you need to earn 56% more than them. You want to be at least 6 foot tall plus. And if I wasn't born that way, fucking sorry me, got to make more than 56% more, because there's markers for that too. People will make allowances based on how much you earn. They'll make allowances on your character, on your masculinity, on blah, blah, blah. So like what can you, like just in general, what do women need to do? Like what can they do? What do they need to do if they're not sure about this stuff? Like, we want this percentage of guy. We want these guys. Well, are we going to get them if we don't know what to do? What do we do? Ladies and gentlemen, what do we do? What's the state of affairs? You want to start?
Well,
I know. This is what I said. Like, I know my facts.
I don't even know.
Speechless.
Yeah, like I don't know where to begin. I really don't. I think, like, I feel like personally, I'm a pretty feminine woman. Like, I definitely appreciate a man taking charge, and in my current scenario, that I don't know if it's a scenario yet or not, like that's the case, and I think. But to the points you've made tonight, I probably want to explore more around what he's looking for. But we're not at that point yet of having some of those detailed conversations. So,
I don't know. Let me think about it a bit more.
All right,
Trying to
all
go
right.
great.
What is the question exactly?
The question is like, what are women supposed to do? Like, they all want these guys, so what are you going to do about it? How are you going to achieve this?
How am I going to get the man of my dreams?
Well, women in general, you don't have to talk about you personally. Like you said, a really good point. Like, I'm extremely feminine. That helps me. Being feminine is a really good start. Absolutely.
I think too, like my values do kind of stack up. I don't want to be out clubbing every weekend. Like, I actually want a partner that I'm going home to or with. Like, I don't want to be out doing those things. Like, so finding somebody with similar interests is, I think, positive as well. So,
Yeah, I think to find the partner you want, I think the main thing is like doing those things yourself. Like, are you that person that you're asking for? If you want a guy who's clubbing every weekend, then cool, you're that girl. But if you want a guy who wants to settle down and has their shit together and all of that, then I think that's a big one. Like,
So if you get your shit together, that's going to attract another guy that has his shit together.
I just think like if you are doing one thing and asking for another, it doesn't usually match up. But if you are that person and you're asking for someone similar, which most people do, they want something similar to what they are, then generally it's going to line up.
Are you talking more in values or overall? Like, oh, I'm career driven. I've gotten all this stuff.
Both.
Both.
Like, you don't agree?
I don't agree with the career driven part. Like, men that, and again, they have to be able to actually achieve that stuff. Like, they have to be able to financially support people, earn a certain amount, all that type of thing. because there's a lot of deluded men too. There's a lot of deluded women as well. So there's a lot of deluded men that think that they deserve, you know, an amazing relationship, and they earn 30 grand a year, and they work 3 times a week or 4 times a week, and they smoke dope on the weekends, and they party and all that stuff. And yeah, that's fucking delusional. Absolutely. But there's a lot of guys that do all the right things and do all this stuff. And the guys that you are talking about that are in that top 10% or whatever, I think your point's probably the most important. It's like, I think this is, again, might be controversial, whatever, but men kind of look at dating in 2 kind of scenarios. It always starts with sex, but they're going to go, all right, we've had sex now. What's actually happening in the interaction? She's still going out. She's still posting stuff on the internet. She's still doing all these things. Okay, yes, no problem. Sex only category. Then
What about as men? Like, what do you think if a girl sleeps with you on a first date?
I'll answer that in a moment, but I just want to talk about this thing. And then if they're doing similar things like you're talking about, they're living the lifestyle that they want for somebody that's more serious and long-term component. Oh, she's
Goes to the gym.
goes
in
to the gym.
mornings, Goes for walks. Yeah.
Her life's organized to some extent. I don't agree with the career part, because I think men that are financially set absolutely do not care about how much money they make. They don't care about the career. They want somebody that adds value to them. That's what they're looking for. They're looking, not to be offensive, but they're looking for someone to assist in their life to some extent, to help them to fill in certain voids that they can't do themselves. Whatever that may look like, helping with the cleaning, doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I know, but I'm not a clean. No, it's not about that. You don't get a choice. If it's that type of individual, you need to look at what they want. Do you want to be the partner of this individual? The usual, like, leverage that you would have with all the other guys, you don't have with somebody that's achieving those things. They might not be aware of it, but they have all the leverage. So what can you actually provide to them? Because they're the ones that everyone's after. That's how to stay, like, you know, in a relationship with these types of dudes. Was that the question or the answer? I'm kind of getting confused now. I'm thinking about the other question. So, yes, there's sex in the first date, but I was just more saying, like, that men kind of differentiate off this stuff. So financial position and career and all that stuff is not really looked at all. It's more all of the stuff you guys talked about in parts and some things, like compliance and help in life, and how much they're going to add to your life and all these things. And I know people always have like these buzz terms like submissiveness or compliance, like, oh, but I'm not a slave. It's not about slaveness or anything like that. It's more about, like we talked about before, with that leadership kind of thing. The man wants to feel needed and sought to for leadership. That's what his role was supposed to be, like, you know, evolutionary speaking. So when that need's not there, well, I'm strong and independent and I do whatever I want and this is how it goes, or actually I'm not going to make that correction there because you're insecure or whatever. I think guys just get turned off, honestly, and they're not. That's not pleasing to them. They don't want headaches. They don't want arguments about small things. They want an easy, peaceful life.
Is that realistic?
Is it realistic? In the West, no, not at all. It's unrealistic in the West for men. But like most other parts of the world, it exists. Yeah, it exists. And I think, like we've mentioned before a little bit too, but like age, that changes a lot as well. Like the younger you are as a woman, the more likely you're going to go and party and do all that stuff and blah, blah, blah. That's normal, whatever. Problem is, though, when you talk about agency in terms of dating, men don't get their agency until they're in their early to late 30s. So they don't become attractive until they're older. Women, however, they're the most attractive in the earlier years, from 18 to, 28, 30. That's when they're most attractive. That's when you have the most agency to attract whoever you want. Now, I think we kind of date. I'll let you
We're
go.
all over the hill. Is what you just said.
I'm not saying no. There's a way. It's not about being over the hill. Now, if you want to talk about it like mathematically, yeah, that you're saying it, not me. I didn't say it. You're saying
It's like
You
we're
did,
over
you said
30.
up to 30.
Up to
Yeah, I
30,
said
and
up
we're
to-
all over 30.
No, but I'm not saying that you're over the hill. What I'm saying is your agency, your power to attract the type of individual you want, the amount of pull that you can have is most in that age bracket.
Okay.
What do men consume? Who knows? What do they consume? What is their primary reason for interacting with women?
Sex.
Sexuality. Very good. You know,
Thank you.
sexuality. So when are women most sexually attractive and most appealing? And it's not like a
So you're saying women?
it's not a
between
shallow
20s,
thing,
okay.
because you were talking about it before. Men find women with wider hips. They want this. Why do they want young women? Because what does it all relate back to?
Child rearing.
Child rearing, that's right. It comes back to childbirth. So your ability to attract and retain a guy is strongest in that age. It doesn't mean it won't happen if you're older. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, oh, you're over the hill, you're never going to find a guy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is
thank
your
you.
ability to find the guy that you want, retain him and hold him, is strongest in that age bracket. And I think actually we are taught to prioritize different things in the West. We're taught to, the career stuff. We're taught have fun, party, have a bunch of guys, do all this type of thing. And unfortunately, I don't know if that leads to successful marriages and long-term relationships. But I don't know. What do you want to say?
I mean, in my circumstances, I
Yeah.
got married at 24.
Yeah,
So
which would have been your
Prime.
Prime, yeah.
still didn't work out. So
I'm not saying that it's going to work out. I'm not saying that it's going to
Yeah,
work
yeah,
out.
yeah.
I'm just saying your ability to find the guy and hold the guy and keep the guy that you want is strongest at that time.
Yeah.
This is, you probably dated, a bunch of guys in between that or before that or whatever that you didn't find. That wasn't the
Yeah.
guy for you. But the guy that you found, that was the guy that you ended up having a long marriage with or whatever. You had your ability to retain and hold him then the most, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of saying. I'm not saying that it doesn't. Everybody, the great thing about being a woman is you will always find a partner. You're never going to find. Now, is it the partner you want? That's a different story. You.